Hello and welcome to Freed Indeed Live. I'm your host, Kevin J.N. Hughes. I'm joined today by my very special guest. You know him as the Yeen. I know him as Nick. So Nick, Mr. Yeen, how did you come to know about Orthodoxy to begin with? Well, why don't you
Um,
actually introduce yourself first a little bit and
sure.
kind of tell people who you are and kind of how we know each other a little bit maybe, and then how you came to know Orthodoxy.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Nicholas. Um, and really, I'm nobody, but I'm an Orthodox Christian. I live in New York, and my mom's American. My father's Turkish, and yeah, I guess those are the main the general things.
Were you
I've been
raised
Orthodox
Muslim?
for no, actually I was atheist my whole life. I was not
Oh,
raised
really?
religion. Yeah. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. But yeah, the only religious thing I had growing up was that I my parents took me to a Unitarian Universalist church for a few years when I was like middle school age, middle school, early high school. And I really hated that because I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, Unitarian Universalism, maybe you know what that is, but it's basically a non-denominational church. And they don't even call it a church. It's just a community space. And they had singing. It was an old like Methodist church, the actual building they had. Um, but they would have a choir, they would sing songs, and they had a female, not a pastor, but they had a somebody community leader that was an old lady, and she would give a sermon about being nice to other people and tolerance, or talk about nature or so. I mean, it was so boring. I don't even remember much, but we did youth classes. And we did do comparative religions, which was cool. So we learned about Buddhism, Islam, Christianity. Um, and I don't know, all the kids that went there were super weird and liberal. So I don't talk to anybody from there. But that's as much as I remember about it. And then again, rest
What
of my life,
got your parents into that, if you don't mind me asking?
I really have no idea. My dad never came, but my mom was the one that was into it because it was a lot of people she knew from other stuff. It was kids that went to my school district, a lot of people that we kind of knew. I didn't like any of these people, but we knew these people, and really I didn't understand it at the time, but now I can understand it as my mom wanted a religious community without the religion part, right? Because everybody has a longing for wanting to be part of a community. So that's really what I would describe it as. They would have food and stuff, and they'd have a coffee hour after the service. But there was nothing about God or religion or any type of morality besides, be nice to each other, which I just don't find that to be edifying or useful in any way. And
Right.
so it definitely, colored my opinion of religion um, at that time. And I thought, I guess this is what all churches are, lame and boring and mostly like old people. Um, which I guess there are some churches that are like that, but it was a bizarre place. You know what I mean? It was a bizarre experience for me, I guess.
So that's interesting. So you're now, I'd like to hear more about this comparative religions aspect. So were you studying different religions, or was it just kind of like a lame, like, well, Buddhists kind of sort of have this thing about reincarnation, and Christians have this other thing, and like super basic, or was it
It
actually
was
like
basic.
diving into? Oh, okay.
It was pretty basic. We watched some videos about Buddhism, kind of just the story of it, Christianity, Islam. I'll be honest with you, we did Christianity the least. And again, I don't remember too much, but what I do remember is that what they said about Christianity was like very Protestant, and
Right.
it's like they tried to make it not interesting on purpose, or they just didn't really care. Um, I'm trying to remember what other religions we did. I guess we did Judaism. I remember the Buddhism one. They spent a lot of the people there were like really into Buddhism, you know. It's something liberals are really into for some reason. So I think they
Which
spent
is
more time
hilarious to
on
me
that.
because Buddhism is actually like as conservative as Christianity. Like go to any Buddhist country and they're super
Right.
conservative.
Right. And they really have traditions, and they have a strong culture, and they have strong moral values. But of course, we're talking about the Western American Buddhism, which is like people that go do yoga. They just think it's,
Right.
to de-stress, man, and like meditate and, think about nothing. And that's only one type of Buddhist meditation. There's many different types. From
Hmm.
my understanding, some of them are quite bizarre, and maybe even they get into some type of pagan demonic things as well, with the yoga and the Buddhists, some of the meditations, but what we have in America is, of course, a consumer version of Buddhism.
Right.
So
California Buddhism, right?
right, right, yeah, and these people don't even practice Buddhism. I've had so many people say to me, "Well, yeah, I'm Buddhist. I just believe in there's nothing."
Right.
Hey, I don't know. That just seems like a cop out to me.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, so we spent a lot of time on Buddhism. Again, it's an interesting story and all that, but it really all just points to Christ, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but it was good that I learned
Exactly.
that and later kind of connected that to Christ. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you come to like so you're raised in this kind of atheistic household, you attend a universal how long did you do the Unitarian Universalist thing with your mom?
like 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
Okay, so you're doing that for 3 or 4 years, and then what
I
kind of
hated that. I really
changed?
wanted to stop going. Eventually, we did stop going, thank God. Um, and then I went through high school, graduated high school, went to college. I didn't um, I didn't really think much about God or religion at all until my senior year of college. Um, and I think the catalyst for me was that I read Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. Loved that book. Um, and it changed my perspective a lot. It really, he talks, about the Old Testament a lot and a little bit about the New Testament. And he talks about some of those stories, Genesis, Cain and Abel. And I thought, wow, these are like really interesting stories. And I wanted to learn more. I wanted to read them for myself. So I went and bought, a King James Bible. Um,
Nice.
I was just moved, I was moved. I went and bought a Bible because I realized, you know what? I've never read one page of the Bible. Never read one page of it. I've never read one verse. And my whole life, I'm like, oh, I kind of know what Christianity is about, I think, right? But I didn't. I had no clue at all. And that's so many people in our society.
Right.
They think they know Jesus. They can tell you more facts about, Joe Biden than they can tell you about Jesus. They can tell you more facts about some random historical figure than Christ. They don't know Christ. They think they do,
Right.
but they don't at all, right? Because the Bible gets so misinterpreted and mischaracterized, and we have our culture. Unfortunately, we can blame that on, because they put Christian motifs and things in movies and TV, but it's so twisted in such a sick way, you know.
Right.
And so people think, yeah, I know what Christmas is, I know what this is, but they have no idea, you know. And that was me, and I was honest with myself about that. I was like, you know what? I don't know anything about Christianity, and I wanted to learn more. I was just my curiosity was piqued by Jordan Peterson's book, and him talking about morality, and I'm like, you know what? He's right. He's right. And so I read Genesis, Exodus, I read Job, Ecclesiastes. I mean, I just loved it. I was so moved. I'm like, this has to be true. I mean, it just clicked for me logically, but spiritually. It touched my heart. It touched my soul. Um,
Right.
I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe God is real. Because this makes so much sense. There's no way this makes so much sense. and it can't, but everybody tells you the Bible's fake, it's fairy tales, story tales. And I wasn't trying to disprove it. I know some people have a journey where they're like, I'm going to disprove the Bible, and then they convert to Christianity.
Right.
Sure, you've heard many stories like that, but me, I was just like, wow, this is like a door had been opened to me, and I'm seeing the light, and I'm like, I was moved on such a level I had never felt anything like it before. And so I
That's
set out on
awesome.
that journey. I wanted to know God. I wanted to find God.
That's awesome. So when you wanted to find God, did you start like trying different churches, or what was
Yeah.
that part of your journey like?
Oh yeah. So I went to a an evangelical Protestant kind of church with one of my buddies in college. Really hated it. Good experience, but I really hated it. Um, and I find it hilarious that these types of churches, they claim that they are 100% biblical. They follow the Bible, but they
Right.
don't use the Bible in the service. The pastor they sing these horrible, horrible, horrendous songs. They've got a whole band, a stage, lights. Sometimes they got the smoke machine. They got all these little trinkets and bells and whistles. And you're sitting, it looks like a little, conference auditorium, right? There's one cross on the wall in the corner somewhere.
Right.
Some of these churches don't even have any symbols or crosses because for some reason they think these things are bad or pagan. I don't every church has a different type of silly kind of logic for why they don't
Right.
have any early ancient Christian symbols. And I'm sure you've heard all of them, but thankfully they did have a wooden cross. That was nice, right? But it's off in the corner. It's not the focus, right? Which already said to me, I'm like,
Right.
Jesus Christ is not the focus here. And that's what I thought to myself. And so they sing a bunch of terrible songs, we love you, Jesus, like awful, horrendous. Then the pastor, which is just a dude in skinny jeans and Converse and a t-shirt, gets up there. He reads one psalm, talks about it, gives his interpretation of it. This is what I think it means. Okay, that's it. That's it's 40 minutes, right? That's the whole Sunday service, right?
Right.
And I just found this so, again, I don't know anything about ancient Christianity at this time, but I'm just like, this is a joke. This is so stupid. To me, it actually, the word I said to my friend is like, isn't this blasphemous? Like, isn't this like sacrilegious? You know what I mean? And my buddy was Protestant. He's like, I don't know. He didn't like it that much either. It's just we didn't have any other options on campus. That place was on a
Right.
college campus. Um, and once I graduated, I went to a Catholic church. Um, Hated that. And it was this beautiful, massive, brand new cathedral. I mean, the church was very, very beautiful, but the actual mass was so boring, so horrendous. It was kind of the opposite of the evangelical church. It was just so boring. The priest looked like he was about 100 years old. I just remember them asking for money 3 times. And the homily, I don't even want to call it that, but the sermon at the end that the priest gave, he literally said, okay, we need to accept more immigrants into our country, like give money to refugees at the border. And I'm like, this is a joke. What does this have to do with God? I mean, this is such a joke. Like, immigration's destroying our country. Why are you up here like promoting an agenda? Like they promote, the Catholic Church is fully woke and fully gone, and they,
The Catholic
promoting
Church
an
is woke.
agenda. Um, and everybody was so just unfriendly and unpious in that church. And I know that's not a reason alone to not go to church, but in general, I think the church is definitely a reflection of the people. If
Right.
Christ isn't leading his flock, the flock will go astray. So
Exactly.
at some, it goes both ways, right? Everybody's a hypocrite, but also if everyone is just behaving so terribly in the church, I think that says something about the church. Because
Right.
people go there to listen, they want to be led, and these priests and these Catholic priests and Protestant pastors are just not leading people.
Exactly.
So that was kind of my Catholic experience. And I had my close friend in college, my roommate when I was a senior, was a devout Catholic. Came from a family of 11 kids. And at that
Nice.
time, he was walking away from the church because he was realizing himself that the Catholic Church just teaches so many false doctrines and heresies. He came to I really admire him for this. He came to the conclusion without reading anything, without reading any Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, any apologetics. He came to the conclusion himself that the Immaculate Conception is a heresy. And I
That's
thought that was
awesome.
really brilliant, Yeah, I'm like, good for you, man. And we've reconnected now years later, and he's on his way to the Orthodox Church. He's becoming really, really convinced. And it really like touches my heart. I'm so happy for him,
That's
because
awesome.
he's gone through a lot, and his family really kind of abused him with the Catholic morality. And,
Mm,
Catholics grow up with this really scrupulous, everything's a mortal sin and you're going to go to hell. But they don't even believe any of this stuff anyway. They just say it. They
right.
just say this to people because the Catholic Church, they are the Pharisees, they are Pharisaical, and Catholics today are Pharisaical. Um,
It's very true. That's
yeah. And
very
it's
true. I
like,
was actually raised Catholic, so I
oh,
know
really?
exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that's
My
probably why we get along so well. And I know you probably see the stuff I post. I don't hold back from posting a lot of stuff about the Catholic Church.
Absolutely.
There's so much that needs to be said, and I just want people to hear the truth.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my family wasn't quite what you're describing because I mean, for most of my life, we were pretty nominal. So it was like, we went to church on Sundays. And to be honest, just going to church every single Sunday made us like, super pious to most people, which I look back on and think is kind of sad, like how
Yeah,
low the bar is, really. But yeah, that was my growing up experience was like you go to church and then afterwards you go to a restaurant and maybe talk about the homily or whatever, and then for the rest of the week, your Catholicism is basically just praying the Our Father once a day, and that's pretty much it. The Our Father and the Hail Mary. You can't forget Mary in that.
right,
So, how
right.
did you discover Orthodoxy then?
So after I was kind of done with like Protestant churches, that's not it. Catholic Church, absolutely not it. And my roommate, in college told me, he's like, you can try other churches. He's like, whatever you do, just don't become Catholic. Because he was fully aware. He's like, the Catholic Church is destroyed. It's done for. And at the time, it was crazy. He was saying a lot of Orthodox things.
Right.
Never heard about the Orthodox Church. And I asked him because we had some
Wow.
amazing conversations. We would talk about sacraments, the Bible. We would talk for hours. I credit him as a person that really led me to Christianity. He helped me out a lot, even when he himself really became an agnostic at that time. But he was a smart guy and he understood logically a lot of these things can be true. Um, but I asked him, man, what do you think about the Orthodox Church? He's like, I don't know much about it, but it might be worth checking out. If they're not like the Catholics, it might be a good bet. That's what he said, and I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. Um, but I didn't check it out until the very end. After the Protestant Catholic, I was living in Ohio for a little while and I started going to a mosque, and I became a Muslim because on paper you just recite they have like a creed, like the Shahada, and that's it. There's no catechism process. You could walk into a mosque tomorrow and become Muslim. There's no process, which I think was kind of the undoing for me, the fact that it's that easy to
Right.
become Muslim. Like later when I left, I'm like, that's kind of stupid. But I went there for a few months, and I read the Quran. I had taken a class about Islam in college. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. Um, but I think what led me to Islam was, my father was not raised Muslim. I mean, he did go to the mosque a little bit as a kid, but he's atheist now. And in Turkey in general, most people might not know this, but Turkey is not a super religious country. On paper, it's like 80% Muslim. Um, and people in Turkey, don't get me wrong, very conservative. They have a great culture, very culturally conservative. People have families. People definitely have an innate sense of morality. It's quite a nice country and a nice society. Political things aside, because the
Right.
government does things that are bad, of course, but in general, Turkish people are really, really nice people. They're very hospitable. Turkey has great food, great beaches, really, really, really nice people, honestly. They're really nice to anybody, any culture, any country goes there. They love Americans, they love people. So I just want to say that for the record, because I think a lot of Orthodox converts in the West see these memes about retaking Constantinople, and whether or not something happens in the future is up to God, and it's out of our hands. And of course, I have nothing against Greek people, but I don't appreciate the like hatred of Turkey. Like, I know, of course, bad things happen. The Muslims did horrible things to the Orthodox, but you got to understand that most people in Turkey have no, like, they don't care about this kind of stuff. If you're a Greek and you go to Turkey, nobody cares. But if you're Turkish and you go to Greece, you'll get some racism. Like, the Greeks really hate the Turks more than the Turks hate the Greeks. You know what I mean? Because I feel like in Turkey, people are kind of chill with whoever. Istanbul is a very international city now. I mean,
Right.
it's a massive metropolitan area, and so I'm trying to just like be cool with everybody, be at peace. Like, we got to love one another regardless of what historical things happened in the past.
Right.
uh, and so I'm a little bit, just wanted to say that for the record, that sometimes the Greek people, they say, yeah, Turkish people are this and that. It's like, well, how do you know? You've never been there. The
Right.
government doing things is one thing. The government doesn't represent the people. I mean, people think Americans are all bad just because our government's terrible, and
Right.
it is. But the average American has nothing to do with the government and probably doesn't like what the government's doing. And that's really the
Right.
case in most countries. So I just think it's a little bit unfair, the way Turkey is characterized, because it is a really nice country. Of course, I'm biased. I've been there many times, but it's a nice place. It's a nice country. And like, if you're Christian, whatever, people don't care. There's Christians in Turkey. There's Greek churches. There's Greek neighborhoods. There's Armenian churches. Everybody's kind of chill with everybody else. It's generally not a super militantly Islamic country. People really don't pray a lot. People drink alcohol. It's not, it's like Bosnia, I think, so.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I was just reading the life story of Saint Constantine the Turk, and it was really interesting because he was kind of talking about that, how he was actually a Turk, but he's going around Turkey and he's a Muslim, but then he wants to become a Christian. So he just starts walking into all these Christian churches and praying with the Christians and stuff. And they ended up sending him to another country to get baptized because at that time it was illegal to convert from Islam in
Yeah.
Turkey. I don't know if it's still illegal there or not,
No, not
but it was
anymore,
at
but
that
yeah,
time.
I mean, in the past, of course, there were serious persecutions. We can't deny those things. And there were many Turks that did convert to Orthodox Christianity, and they were killed, they were martyred, so we should definitely keep these things in mind. But we can't assume, because the average Turkish person they don't know about any of this stuff, so um it's you got to take everything in context, of course.
Right, absolutely. But it was just interesting how, like, even with all that persecution, there's like all these Orthodox churches that this guy who we don't know his Turkish name, but he when he got baptized, his name was Constantine. So that's what he biographies himself as. But so Constantine is going around, well, he's still a Muslim, and there's all these Orthodox churches and there's no sense that like these people hate each other. They're all
Right, right,
hanging out together. There was an Orthodox woman that came over to his house when he was sick, even though at that time he was a Muslim. Some Orthodox, there's definitely in America where we think that it's like all bad, like you were talking about, and it's just not that way. So I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah.
That
I
actually
think
kind of reminds me.
no,
No,
I
go
was
ahead. Go
gonna
ahead.
say, in Turkey, the young people are probably mostly atheists, very secular. I mean,
Really?
they dress like Americans, you know, and all the Muslim countries really, you don't see it in the news because they try to really cover this up, but atheism is spreading like crazily throughout the Muslim world. But Christianity is spreading crazy as well. And there are a lot of Christians in Turkey now, so really you have a few paths you can take. You reject Islam, you don't like it when you're a young person in Turkey. You either become atheist or maybe you become something else, Buddhist, but a lot of them are becoming Christian, like David Erhan is a big
Mhm.
Orthodox content creator, and I would love to talk to him. He seems like a great guy, but he has said the same thing as well, So it's cool. It's exciting. It's definitely exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that kind of reminds me of my interview last week with a guy named Tim Kirby who moved to Russia. And he was talking about kind of in how in America we have all these sort of stereotypes surrounding various cultures and things. And, to some extent, I think that's unavoidable. People don't have experiences with something. So maybe they read a book about it, and then they're like, oh, that's what Muslim countries are like. But it's really good for us when we hear these stories and realize that it's not like that in the real world. This is not how people think in the real world,
Yeah, absolutely.
for the most part.
I mean, a lot of people I work with are Muslim, and they really respect me a lot, and they respect me even more because I know a lot about Islam. I've read the Quran. I was a former Muslim, and but they respect me. They're like, if you're Christian, it's cool, But they respect me because I know about their faith. They don't know much
Right,
about mine. They know a little bit about Christianity, but I really I know more about Islam than a lot of Muslims, to be honest with you.
right,
I don't brag about that, but it's just that, just like many Christians are nominally Christian, many Muslims are, it's purely cultural as well. They're nominally Muslim. They go to the mosque not so often. They don't really pray 5 times a day. I don't think I've met any Muslims that pray 5 times a day. I mean, there's not many. Some do, but even though that's supposed to be a hard rule, they don't do it.
right,
And but they're nice. They're cool with me. They're chill. They respect me. I respect them. Um, screaming at Muslims and saying, you guys are like evil heretics is not going to convert anybody. You know, we
exactly.
we need to have an Orthodox witness, and we need to really be patient with everybody. And they admire me because they see me praying at work. They see me. I have my prayer robe. I'll be reading my psalter, and I mean, I've kind of put them to shame because they're like, this guy's Christian and he's praying more than us. And they thought, oh, Christians don't pray at all, So by
Right,
praying in public, by having a little psalter, a prayer book, wearing your cross, talking about what saint of the day it is, these little things make a tremendous witness to the world. Um, and so, dressing nicely, dressing well is something that really, because again, the bar for fashion is so low today. I talk about this a lot, but the bar for
right,
modest fashion is so low that if you just try a little, comb your hair, look nice, it's not vain. Actually, you're showing, look, this guy's a Christian. He's got it together. He's presenting himself to the world in a respectful way. This guy, you want to stand out from the crowd a little bit, in a good way, right? In a good way.
right,
So these things really make a difference. They make a tremendous difference. Just having Jordan Peterson, having a clean room, having a clean house, because
right.
people see that and they're like, but this guy's a Christian, he's got it together, So being normal and being organized and being successful are very Christian things. These are good things.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. That's a really good thing to point out as well. That, because people, I think, especially in the West, think that in order to be a Christian witness, you have to be like on a street corner yelling at people. And the
yeah,
reality is that's not
they don't get
primarily
anybody.
how we
You don't
witness.
convert anybody by screaming at them. Like, when does that ever
Exactly.
work? I mean, there's a time and a place to argue with people and to have a debate. I'm not against debating,
Right.
but
Absolutely.
mostly it does nothing. It's better. I just saw a great quote. I forgot which church father. He said it's better to not talk about our faith. It's better to live it, because if we talk about
Right.
it and don't live up to what we said, we're hypocrites and we'll be condemned for that. And it makes us look bad to the whole world. That's what the Catholics do. They say this and that. That's a mortal sin. And then they go do that thing that they just said is a mortal sin. Like
Right.
the biggest hypocrites. And everybody in the entire world sees this. They know this. They realize this. So as Orthodox, let's be different. Let's be different.
Exactly.
We're all still hypocrites, but if we try, we can do better. Really, we can do better. You know. But yeah, anyway, I went to the mosque. I was going there for a few months, and just to finish the story,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
in Islam, again, probably most people don't know much about it, but basically, you go to the mosques on Friday, usually in the morning or the afternoon, and that's kind of their Sunday service. Is you go on, I don't know why, I forgot why, but you go on Fridays, you do the prayer, which takes 20 minutes. And then the imam, which is not really a priest or like a pastor, the imam is just like the church leader, the mosque leader, let's say, and he's the one that he'll give a sermon, like a talk, about something in the Quran or a hadith. I didn't find these very helpful or useful. They're all over the place. He would just talk about something. He would talk about camels or some surah, some verse in the Quran, and that would be it. And I'm like, I don't know what I really got out of that. The stories are weird. Like Arabic, the Middle East culture and history is very different from the West. So things that they find funny or relatable, or it's very like only catered to their culture. And that's why I think Islam really fails to be a universal religion. There's nothing universal about it. I mean, the Quran is 100% a book that was written in the Middle East. You can just tell that immediately by reading it. The Bible is truly a universal book. It can apply to anybody at any time, anywhere, in any country or culture. The Quran is not. It's just not.
Right.
They talk a lot about the desert and camels, and the hadiths talk about all these things that you're going to be like, I don't know what that means, because it's not
Right.
going to make sense to you because you're not Arab, you're not from the Middle East. And so I didn't find it relatable to me as a white American. And Turkey is not an Arabic country also. Like Turkey
Right.
has a very different culture from the other Muslim countries. They don't speak Arabic, they speak Turkish. So it's very different. Not a lot about Turkey is very Arabic or Middle Eastern. And they don't get along with a lot of other Middle Eastern countries for that reason.
Right.
There's bad blood there. There's bad history. The Muslims have been fighting with each other since Islam was invented, even before it came into being. So it's nothing new. I know the Christians, we fight with each other too, but it's not unique to Christianity. Trust me. The Muslims
Right.
really hate each other. There's not one type of Islam. There are sects. There are different approaches and philosophies within Islam. Even within Sunni Islam, within just because that's the largest group is the Sunni Muslims. Even within the Sunnis, there are different philosophies and schools of thought about how to apply the Quran to Islamic life. So trust me, it's a headache to try to think about all that. But I left, man, because it just I didn't feel anything sacred about it. Wasn't doing it for me. No offense to the Muslims, but the Quran is just not a very good book. You can read it in a day, and it's not a very long book. It's not very good. I find there to be no substance in it. I just don't find any substance in it, and I find nothing about it to be divinely inspired or from God. I didn't feel it. Nothing was clicking for me. So,
Right.
I learned a lot more later on when I became Orthodox. But I left that. I moved back to New York, and I'm like, I gotta try the Orthodox Church, man. That's the only thing I haven't tried. What else? What else is there to try? And it was cool because at that time on Twitter, there were a lot of people posting about the Orthodox Church. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of content, and that really encouraged me and motivated me to really give it a go. Because people were saying all these great things about the Orthodox Church. I saw all these people online converting. Um, and the first church I went to was a Russian Orthodox church. And the reason for that is kind of interesting. So in college, I needed a language credit. I took Russian language for a semester, which I loved. And I took Russian history for a semester to fulfill my history credit.
Nice.
And I don't know why I did it. I mean, really, I was on Instagram and this girl followed me and she lived in St. Petersburg, Russia. And I saw her photos. She was an art student, a photographer, and her photos were beautiful. And I thought, I didn't know what city it was. I thought it was Venice or something. I thought it was somewhere in Europe. And then I saw, oh, it's Russia. And I'm like, I was so shocked. I'm like, wow, man, like that's Russia, it's beautiful. This
Right.
beautiful city. And I'm like, but these people have they've got culture, This is not what I've been, because look, I mean, in America, we're brainwashed our entire lives about Eastern
Right.
Europe, Russia, it's a dump. Everybody's in the mafia. I mean, none of that stuff is true, man. It's not true
Right.
at all. Um, it's like people in other countries, they think all Americans are farmers and they have trucks. And no, there's such a variety of different types of people in America. I mean, every state is different from another. We've got 50 states, we've got 50, every city has a different culture. So it's by no means is America this homogenous country, and no other country is
Right.
homogenous. There's different regions and cultures, and different regions within a country will hate each other, just like people from New York hate people from Boston. Like really, it's so much more complicated than people think. Um, but yeah, just I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take Russian language and history. I don't know anything about Russia. It piqued my interest. So God had me see those photos of St. Petersburg at the right time. And I became really good friends with this girl. She went to art school and I saw her. I was in Russia this past summer. I saw her. We hung out. We'd been friends for a long time, like almost 60 years. And so she's
Wow.
really cool. And she's like not super Orthodox. She's been going to church more lately, which is great for her. But at the time, she was not really going to church at all when we first met. And I told her, I joked with her, I'm like, you're the reason I found the Orthodox Church. It all started when you followed me, and it started this chain of events. You know what I mean? It started this chain of events where I got interested in Russian history because I never was interested in Russia. I mean, this was purely like a freak thing. I could not have come up with this on my own. Um,
Right.
and then I'm learning about Russian history. In that class, I learned about the church. I'm like, oh, it's very interesting. I learned about Tsar Nicholas, the royal family. I learned the fake Soviet version, of course, of what happened.
Right.
But later, I learned the truth. Of course, I learned the real story. And he's your patron saint as well, right?
Yes, he is. Yes.
We of course we have a lot in common. We have Tsar Nicholas. We both love him. It's an amazing story. Um, and yeah, so I started going to the church, and that was it, man. The first time I went to that church in 2019, the Russian Orthodox Church, that divine liturgy, I was just like smack in the face, like, oh my,
Yes.
this is beautiful. It was amazing. And I mean, it freaked me out. There's no pews. You have to stand.
Right.
Incense. The choir is so loud. The priest, the vestments, gold, dazzling, the icons, the whole church is painted with icons. I mean, the whole thing was so just a sensory overload. And it was terrifying for me. I was nervous. I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, where am I? What is this? Because this is unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life. This is unlike any kind of American church that's out there. And it
Right.
puts all those laser light shows and concerts to shame. It puts it to shame, man. It's not even close. And I felt it in my heart and my soul. And I said to myself, the first time I went, I'm like, I'm at home. This is it, man. I am home. I felt a sense of belonging, and I'm not Russian or anything. And I mean, there's plenty of American people at my church too. Most of the people are American. Um,
Right.
but they preserve that ethos, that Russian Orthodox culture, which I love, man.
Yes.
Love that. And if you go to a Greek church, you'll have that salt of the Greek culture, and you go to a Romanian church, not in like in a secular way, like, oh, Romania is the
Right.
best or Russia's the best, but they preserve the little traditions and elements, which I love because they're harmless. It's good to
Exactly.
have these things. You know, but I never stopped going, man. I never stopped going. COVID happened. I immediately, the minute the church reopened, I started going as soon as I could. I started going back. Um, and which was sad because we did lose some parishioners during COVID. Some people never came,
Yeah.
some older people, and I felt really sad for them. But I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I'm
Right.
gonna go as soon as I can, as soon as they open the church. And thanks be to God, the church was not closed for a long time, just a few months, thank God for that. But I went back as soon as I could, and I was baptized in 2021 on Holy Saturday. So thanks be to God. And I mean, it's amazing, man.
You were
So
baptized in 2021 on Holy Saturday?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I was baptized on 2020 on Holy Saturday.
There you go, right? There you go. I mean, it's
A year
crazy.
to the day. A year
Yeah,
to the
year to the
day.
day. See,
That's
we have
awesome.
more in common than we think. Very
Exactly.
interesting. Um,
Oh.
it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I for me it was a lot the same. It was like I went to the Orthodox church and I kind of had this at that time it was actually during COVID, so all the other churches were closed, but I had been reading a lot of Orthodox books and so I was kind of like, okay, this is my chance to check it out because I can't even go to where I have been going anyway.
It's
So
good.
I walked in and like you said, I was just floored by it. I couldn't believe how amazing the experience was. I couldn't believe just the sensory overload, everything about it was just so incredible. Then and at that time we were actually meeting outside most of the time because during COVID they were talking about shutting churches down and my priest, Father Michael, kind of came up with the idea. He said, well, why don't we just meet for the liturgy outside, and then they can't do anything, and if they show up and say you can't have church service, we'll just say it's a protest.
Good. It's good. It's clever.
so so we were able to keep going, but oh, it was just amazing. And then yeah, so that's awesome. You were baptized in 21. So when you were studying the Russian history in college, did they talk a lot about Tsar Nicholas, or did you kind
Just a
of
little bit,
learn about
but
it
it definitely
yourself?
piqued my curiosity, that story. And it really moved me. And the reason I picked him as
Right.
my patron saint was because I went in the church the first or second liturgy I was there. I was standing right next to his icon. We have a massive
Really?
icon of him in the church. And I didn't recognize any of the other icons. I didn't know much at the time about iconography, but I recognized him because I had seen like other pictures of icons of him, and I'm like, yeah, that's our Nicholas, isn't it? And so I thought it was fitting. I should pick him as my saint, and it's cool. I've met a lot of people that have chosen uh, Tsar Nicholas as their patron saint. I've met a lot of dudes, which is great. I'm like, that's amazing. So he's really converted a lot of people. He's worked. He's done a lot of great work to help all of us. Um,
Yes,
and I was fortunate this past summer to go to Yekaterinburg and
that's
to see
right.
the church, where they were martyred. It used to be the house, the basement, and I went to Ganina Yama. That's where they threw the bodies of the royal family into a mine shaft, and now it's a huge monastery complex. And it was very moving for me to see that stuff. Very holy, very amazing places. And I would encourage all Orthodox Christians, if they have the means to do so, to visit Russia, go to these holy sites, because it's just spectacular. I mean, the monasteries and churches I saw, just how big they are, the scale. I mean, you've got icons that are 30 feet tall. You know what I mean? Like,
That's
it's,
awesome.
I've seen nothing like it. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, a church in Moscow, there's a church on every block, you know, and they're all Orthodox. And so it's amazing. I mean, if you can go, man, you gotta go because and he's your saint. So of course you should go visit him and you can pray there, and it's very powerful, very holy place, without a doubt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I would love to do that. Yeah, I've always loved Russian history. I've always been kind of a student of Russian studies, and I don't know what got me into it, to be honest. I never sort of like had a moment where I started being interested in it. It was just like I think I remember even being a really little kid and having some little book that had I think it was called like C is for Czar, and it has all the letters of the Russian alphabet, just kind of, a childish book or something.
Maybe that's what did it, you know? I mean, it's these little things can really be, that do it for you, you know?
Right. I was just so captivated by these images because, Russia has this beauty in their culture that really does just call to you. We don't have anything like that in America, really. We have beauty here. We have, natural beauty, especially, but I don't think there's anything in America. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's anything in American culture that's sort of like beautiful, almost like beauty for the sake of beauty. It's like there's no adornment to American culture. It's very
Oh,
Puritan
I
in
think there
that way.
used to be in the 30s, 40s, 50s. I love some of the American artists. There's some amazing museums in America. We have definitely some amazing culture, music, the old stuff, paintings. Um, it's all gone now. It's all been lost, and you can only see that culture in a museum. It's a relic of the past.
Right.
But Russia has continued that culture, which is cool.
Right.
They have a real sense of patriotism there. And look, I'm not some shill for Russia. It's not a perfect country.
Right.
I don't want to get political here, but purely the culture. I mean, what shocked me when I was there is that people are just so normal. People are so
Right.
normal. There's no gay people. There's no like crime. The streets are, I mean, Moscow is the cleanest city I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's like the fourth or fifth biggest city in the entire world. I think it's the greater metropolitan area of Moscow is 16 million people. I mean, it is
That's
a
awesome.
massive city, but there's a metro train comes every 90 seconds. The metros are so clean. The streets, they sweep them every week. The streets are spotless. There's massive parks everywhere. There's stuff for families, kids to do. There's every kind of restaurant you could ever want. The Indian food, Chinese food, Italian food. They've got it all. I mean, it's such a city of culture, and so is St. Petersburg. I mean, the culture is incredible and amazing. Thankfully, a lot of the Soviet stuff is kind of in the past, and they've really moved into a new
That's
era.
awesome.
Um, so people saying Russia is still Soviet, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't see it because Russia is Moscow is a modern city. I mean, it is an international hub. People from every country in the world go to Moscow to do business. It's not this backwards place that American liberals would like you to believe.
Right.
It's not. There's no crime. I saw very few homeless people. I see more homeless people in the area I live, which is like not even 100,000 people. There's more homeless people here than in a city of 16 million people. I mean, think about that, and everyone is just respectful. They keep to themselves. It's so normal. So you would be shocked because we're not used to normal living in America. We live
Right.
this, our country is a circus. It's a clown show. The way people speak and act and dress is disgusting in America. It's disgusting. And every time I go in public, it makes me sad. It makes me sad
Yes,
how brainwashed and stupid everyone is. And just the etiquette, the way that they carry themselves with, we have no morals in America anymore.
it's
And in
true.
Russia, it's not perfect, but really people just are normal. I mean, it's shocking, So
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good observation. So you mentioned the way people dress and kind of the way that America is like a circus. And in a lot of your posts, you talk about this kind of propriety and modesty and these things. So how did you get into that topic? And how do you see that fitting into the broader Orthodox perspective? Kind of, can you speak to that a little bit?
I don't know how I got into it, man. Honestly, I am an artist. I'm a photographer. And I do work in the art field. And I've always loved fashion. That's something I've always been into. Um, and I was made fun of it when I was younger. People would tell me, "Oh, you're gay, you're metrosexual." I mean, I don't know. I don't see what's gay about wanting to look
Wanting to look
good
nice.
and acceptable in public. Like I really, it's shocking, but it's just, again, our culture has such a low standard of what fashion is.
Right.
Fashion is now about wearing the least amount of clothes possible for men and women. I mean, really, it's disgusting. Um, and people just dress like slobs in public. It's very sad. So I don't know what really got me into it. I've always been into fashion, and when I started seeing the way that men and women in church dress, I think it really inspired me. And I love the way that I love the vestments in the church. And people say it's all external, it's not important, but it is, because we have eyes,
Right.
and what we see should be a reflection of our souls, our inner
Right.
disposition. The world should look a certain way, right? Part of being Christian is is putting out a Christian culture into the world. And Russia,
Yes.
Greece, they understand this. Serbia, they understand this. The ancient Christian church understood this. Um,
Hmm.
you're not, being in a church that's a bunch of chairs and white walls is, they think that's more pious. Protestants think that's pious. It is sacrilegious. It's actually
It
showing that
is.
you don't care. You don't care at all about even trying to look Christian, right? But now, the
That's
looks are
right.
not everything. I will admit that, of course. But there's a reason the ancient church has such a rich
Right.
culture of iconography, incense, vestments. I mean, these things matter because this is what drew me to the church. I mean, the
Right.
iconography gets people in the door, and then they learn all the spiritual things. They learn that life of inner prayer. But, the world should look a certain way. The world should look
Exactly.
Christian, and we should look a certain way. I mean, Christ is depicted in the icons in a certain way. The apostles are always wearing certain types of clothing that reflects their stature, right?
That's
And
right.
we should be no different. We should be no different. It doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. You can go to Walmart and buy some nice shirts, and you can look good on a budget. It doesn't have to be designer or expensive. Simplicity is the best, actually. Simple is best. And I really admire, actually, Orthodox Jews and the Amish. I really actually dig that they have like an aesthetic and a dress code that's strict because you can identify them and
Right.
you know who they are. And I think it helps them to behave in public. Um, and a lot of priests have said that they wear the cassock all the time because it just reminds them of who they are. If they take it off, they can be anybody. And they lose that kind of, inner disposition of, I need to be a priest at all times. I'm not just a priest on
Right.
Sundays, and we're not just Christians on Sundays either. We should dress how we dress in church, mostly outside of church too. We should probably generally be dressing that way. And you don't have to wear suits. Just wearing a nice shirt like this, or getting some nice
Right.
polos, nice shorts, pants, get some nice sneakers. This will do it. I mean, this will do it for you, and show the world that um, we're people that want to be taken seriously. I mean, psychologically, if you are dressed well, people will treat you better. They will
Right.
respect you more. And I think that's important, because then you can tell them, hey, I'm Orthodox Christian. And they're going to say, look at this guy. He looks good. He's got it all together. I mean, it really does make a huge difference.
It
Um,
does. It does.
so, and I've gotten a lot of hate from people because I say a lot of things about, not just for men, but for women too. Modesty for women. I've gotten a lot of hate, even from Orthodox people, saying that I hate women or I'm misogynist. That's not true. I love women. I have a lot of female friends,
Right.
and they're all Orthodox. They really appreciate what I post and say about how women should dress, because they hate it more than I do. They hate it more than men do. Trust me. It's not just like a thing with men, like, oh, women are dressing really slutty. Orthodox women hate it even more because they're like,
Right.
it makes us look bad when Orthodox women are out there dressing really like prostitutes and terribly in church, and they're dressed immodestly. It makes the women look bad. So the women that try to look modest hate it the most. And they're the ones
Absolutely.
that, I followed a lot of Orthodox women on Instagram, and they kind of inspired me. They were posting about modesty, and I'm like, you know, I don't see a lot of people talking about this. So I just thought, I'll talk about it because, look, I'm not a genius or a scholar. There are people, I'll leave it to the priests and the experts and the people that actually study to do apologetics and to do talk about dogmatics. I'll admit I'm not that guy. Maybe I'll comment on it sometimes, but really, I don't know what I'm talking about. I shouldn't talk about these things unless I really study it. It's not our job to speak unless we really know what we're talking about, because we're going to have to answer for all the
That's
words
right.
that we say. Um, but I've read a lot. I've studied the modesty thing a lot. I've studied what the Bible says. So that is something I do feel confident in talking about. And I'm not doing it to attack anybody. It's just that really we need to do better. We need to dress better, and we need to dress like the Christians we are.
I love that. I love that. And I think one thing that might help people to see the value in this is we're not Gnostic. Like, we don't believe that you're a spirit in a body. We believe that we are spirit, body, and that it's all us. That is, so how you present yourself is who you are. You can't divorce those things. And so it does matter. The vestments do matter, the icons do matter, and even the way that we dress, it does matter. It matters how you're presenting yourself, because if you present yourself as a slob or a prostitute or whatever, then that is a reflection of something about your character. And I think that our culture loses that because our culture has this kind of desire to be unique. Although it's interesting that people say they want to be unique, but then they all dress the same. So
Exactly,
there's
exactly. And again, I don't force it on anybody. I don't tell anybody,
right,
you have to do this. I know, some women might feel like they're being attacked, but it's more like I'm just suggesting, you could do better, you could do more. I'm not going to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do. But there is definitely a minimum standard of dress, definitely on monastery grounds, in churches, on church property. And generally people do pretty well. There's been a big
right,
cultural shift where the women are wearing scarves, head coverings, and the older, cradle generations in the church aren't. And it's like, those people they'll pass away, they'll be out, and the new generation is really fervent about this. They're really serious about
right,
it. And I love that. I love that. I mean, I met a girl who, she's going to become a catechumen. She's fully American, and she's like one of the only people that wears a head covering in her parish. And I'm like, good for you, because that it shows that like you're really serious about this, and you're setting
exactly,
a good example for everybody else at your parish. And maybe eventually some of them will follow suit. They're going to follow your example, but all you should do is set the example. And it makes a big difference. Something I learned that an abbot told me was that we should wear long sleeves in church, men and women. That's a big thing. Um,
mm-hmm,
and if women will, because there's clothing that's appropriate to wear in public, but not in church. You know what I mean?
right,
And so like t-shirts, I would, generally try to at least get long sleeve t-shirts, not a lot of logos, but the long sleeves. And again, I'm not going to yell at anybody over it. This is just my advice. This is just my suggestion that it is more pious and more modest. And the reason, cassocks have sleeves, the priests are wearing long
right,
sleeves. We can wear long sleeves too. If you're a woman and you have dresses that are like cut off here or here, you can just get a jacket or a cardigan. I see women do that, and you can take it off when you're outside of the church. But
right,
there's a little step up of cover yourself a little bit more. You don't need to wear the head covering outside of church. It's great if you want to do it, but it's kind of a bare minimum. You should wear it in church. So things like that. Another one that really I don't like, it kills me, is people wearing sandals with no socks. Bare feet
right,
in church is really gross, and it's actually very immodest. You can wear sandals, but you should always wear socks.
right,
And that's something,
absolutely,
again, I was at a monastery and they told me that. And I'm like, that you're right. That makes sense. Because the dude, most of the monks wear sandals, but they'll wear, black socks, right?
right,
Because they're standing a lot in the services. They're in church standing 5-6 hours a day. So they don't want to wear shoes. Their feet can breathe if it's hot where they are, but they wear socks. So sandals, socks, good. Sandals, bare feet is bad. Nobody wants to see your feet. It's a little
right,
bit, it's a little gross, it's a little immodest. I see women doing it more than men. Um, again, just a suggestion for people. Wearing socks, probably a better idea. So
right, absolutely, absolutely. No, I think that's really helpful, and I'm glad that you sort of touch on these issues, because I think for a lot of us, either we don't think about it because we're too busy, sort of, and I'm guilty of it. I don't think about it until I'm getting dressed for church. I don't really think about like modesty or propriety or anything. Um, because I'm, all week I'm thinking about, you know, whatever it is. I'm thinking about apologetics or what I'm going to say about this, what I'm going to say about this book or what I'm going to say about that. And then I'm getting dressed for church and it's like, oh, I'm going to wear long sleeves. And I always do. I always wear a jacket to church. I always wear like a polo.
Good.
And then when I'm at the bookstore, I'm almost always wearing a polo at the bookstore. These last couple days it got so hot that I ended up taking off my polo and I was just wearing a t-shirt because I was just, oh, it was bad.
Oh, it's all right. It's all
But
right. I
I'm a
mean,
wimp. That's my problem.
I'm like at the point where I want to just wear just button down white shirts every day, like, and
Right.
dress pants, belt, tuck the shirt in. Is like I'm almost at that point where I'm just gonna dress like an Orthodox Jew, like most of the time. I'm very close,
Right.
because for my job, I have two jobs. For my weekend job, I have to kind of dress up like this, and then I'm also at church on the weekend. So this is what I'm wearing the whole weekend anyway. And I'm like, people respect me more when I'm in public. People treat me better. Uh, I look older, I look more serious, and I'm
Right.
like, I kind of like the way people treat me when I'm wearing like nicer, like business casual clothes. People just respect me more, and they see me as a serious person. Um, and maybe they're even sometimes people are intimidated because they're like, oh, this is a young guy. Why is he dressed so formally, so well? It's like, because I'm a serious person. I'm a formal person.
Right.
I want people to take me seriously. I don't want people to think I'm some 20-year-old, idiot. I want them to think I'm a serious person. I mean business.
Right. That's
So,
awesome.
so I think it's been a huge thing that I've noticed for me. I will say that I think a lot of my inspiration comes from going to Turkey a lot. And a lot of women in Turkey dress very horribly because of the modern culture, but there's still a lot of women that wear the hijab, they dress in Islamic clothing. And I really love the dresses. They're, long sleeve, long dresses, but they come in every
Yeah.
pattern, color, very beautiful. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Turkey, but people in Turkey are stylish, bro. The men dress really well, they're really stylish. They got nice shoes, jeans. Like my uncle, he's Turkish, he's always dressed stylish. He likes the designer stuff, but they're always dressed well, polos, nice watch, always getting a nice haircut, keeping the beard like nice and trim is really important. And so I think that's kind of been my inspiration as well. And the women there just look so lovely. They look so beautiful. They look more beautiful just because they really care to buy nice dresses. These
Right.
dresses are cheap. I mean, they're cheap. You can get dresses there for $10. Um, and I'm like, they look Orthodox. These Muslim women in Turkey look more Orthodox than a lot of Orthodox women in Greece, Russia. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they really just dress so modestly. And I love it. I personally, that's what I like. I wouldn't force that on any woman. That's personally just the style I like. There are many styles. Modesty is not boring at all. I mean, for women,
Right.
there's so many styles of dresses that are good, and you can do a shirt with a skirt. There's all kinds of stuff, man. There's no shortage of. You can have any pattern, color, style you want. You're not limited at all, and men are not limited at all. Like it's just like don't wear weird graphic tees with something vulgar on them. It's like
Right.
don't wear just a sports jersey. Like try a little harder. For men, it's easy. It's so easy, but a lot of men are lazy and
Right.
should try harder. Women try hard to be fashionable. They just need to direct it to a little bit more being modest. But people have attacked me for that. They said, "Oh, you want women to cover their head more, wear longer dresses, you're Muslim." It's like, but this is how all the early Christian women dressed. You know,
Right.
this is how women, look at every icon of the female saints. They look Muslim because Muslims actually stole the hijab, the head covering, the style of dress from the Jews and Christians back then.
That's right.
Oh, so this is fully Christian. It has nothing to do with Islam at all. And I'm trying to tell
Exactly.
people that some people don't want to listen, some people get it, but that's the truth, man. This is fully ancient Christianity. So don't get mad at me. Go look at the saints. Go look at how they're dressed in the iconography. I mean, why wouldn't you want to? try to imitate them. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? So
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's awesome. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we kind of
I
sign
wanted to
off?
say something real quick.
Oh,
There's a
sure.
person I want to thank that helped me with my conversion. I didn't mention this in my interview with Kyle on his Orthocast channel, but when I was in Ohio, this was kind of at the tail end of me being Muslim before I went to the Orthodox Church. Roosh V was doing a speaking tour. He was driving across America and giving talks, little lectures in different countries. And he came to Columbus. He came to Ohio. And I went, and I'm glad I did, because at that time he had just converted to Orthodox Christianity. And so he gave this amazing talk talking about his journey and his experience. And maybe you're a little bit familiar with him, but for those who aren't, he was a pickup artist. He was a big men's rights advocate, red pill kind of guy. He had a good blog. I loved him. I read his website, his articles. He said a lot of good stuff. He said a lot of true stuff. He was somebody that was speaking for men at a time when there weren't many other people speaking up for men, and still our culture, hates men. Of course, not much has changed since a few years ago. But it was good. We met. We went to a bar after and hung out with Roosh, a couple guys from that went to the talk, and I talked to him, and he was just such a nice, down to earth guy, and it was really cool to meet him because I had read most of his books, and I knew who he was for many years. He was, I guess, somewhat of an internet celebrity, in that kind of sphere for conservative men. And
That's
it
cool.
was amazing hearing his story. This guy was a full blown atheist pickup artist. He lived in Poland, Ukraine, and then here he is. I mean, coming to Orthodoxy. And that really, left an impression with me that, he had this journey, and it really hit me. I'm like, wow, I got to go to the church. I got to go to an Orthodox church, because the way he described it is the way that you described it, and exactly what I saw. And so I want to thank Roosh V. And he's an amazing guy, an amazing man. He's been slandered a lot, but he's an amazing person. And I think his journey is incredible. I don't find mine to be that interesting. I hope other people find it useful, but I really thought his story was phenomenal. And it's really, man, the world is a small place, because he now lives by Jordanville, by Holy Trinity Monastery.
Really?
Yeah, and I see him, every time I'm there, and I've hung out with him, and it's amazing. Like the people I've met keep coming back into my life, and so many people have helped me on my journey to Christianity, to Orthodoxy, and he's one of those people that really helped me. And he's a great guy. He's a great guy, and it's just his journey is amazing. So want to give a shout out to him. He's not doing much writing or blogging anymore, but his recent books he put out were really good, and I encourage anybody to check out his. I think his blog is still up, and some of his videos are still online. But he had an honest search as well with
That's
the truth.
awesome.
So, yeah,
That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that. That's great. I always love hearing how these people who, it's like somebody might live a very sinful life, but then they come to Orthodoxy and they honestly become the best examples of Orthodox Christianity, because it's like you've sort of done everything and now you're you're ready to give yourself over to God because you see the vanity of everything else. And so I think some of those people have the most powerful example to all of us, really.
it's crazy, man. I've met every type of person that's become Orthodox: Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, other Muslims, people that were just hardcore atheists. I mean, anti-theists. They hated the very idea that there could even possibly be a God, right? People that really set out to disprove the Bible, and then they read it and they
Right.
converted to Christianity. Um, so it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure you've heard some amazing people's stories, and there's every type of person, across the board that has come to the church. I mean, it's really a universal religion. This is it, man. I mean, it
Yes.
it, it speaks to anybody, anytime, anywhere, from any type of religious background, any cultural background. So,
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you doing this with me. I appreciate being able to interview you and being able to learn about your story. I think it's very inspiring. And I know you just kind of said that you don't think your story is that interesting, but I think it's very inspiring. I love learning about how different people come to see the faith and all that. And for those of you watching at home, please do share this with your friends so that they too can be freed indeed. God bless.